All righty. Well, thanks for joining us on what might be a nasty weather day in your part of the country, but right now it's just raining here in Des Moines, but I hear it's getting slicker. So my name is Steve Tenney, and I want to thank you for investing your time today as we share information that may assist you with how you address technology and specifically cybersecurity. I am a member of the firm's construction industry group, and my focus is assisting our clients connected with the construction industry and helping them tackle the challenges that they may face and also develop a strategy for the future. I'm located in our Des Moines office, and I am a construction resource for all of our locations. Bergen KDV is committed to the construction industry, and this presentation is part of our continuing series of educational and informative webinars for our clients. Our presenters today are Jake Wagner, who is a senior technology sales specialist for the firm. Jake is based out of our Cedar Rapids office, and he specializes in both technology and cybersecurity fields and helps our clients increase their understanding of the exposures in technology, and they find solutions for those situations. Joe Venz, if we get him connected here, is a risk management specialist with First Main Street Insurance. And Joe is based out of the Iowa City area, and he also brings a wealth of knowledge about some solutions that may help protect the financial risk regarding or resulting from cybersecurity issues. He'll also share some perspectives around what the risks and exposures include. And then Joanna Sorber is assisting us with the presentation. She'll be monitoring the chat area for any issues and questions. Everyone will initially be muted during the presentation, but please share your thoughts and questions throughout the presentation using the chat box, and we'll do our best to answer any of those questions as we go through the presentation portion. At the end of the session, there will be an opportunity for questions as well. And as you noted, the webinar is being recorded and distributed to participants later on. So let's get started. Jake, all yours.
Cool. Can you hear me all right, Steve?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And yeah, just apologies, I suppose, as we get we get everybody connected here. So a little mix up on the link. So I'll go ahead and share the screen. We've got a presentation put together here. And Mr. Venz, thank you for joining us.
You know, this is why it's so important that we do these things, because I was just in a Teams room and then I was in the wrong Zoom room. So my apologies on being late.
No worries, no worries. So Steve's already kicked us off here. We're going to dive in. We'll go ahead and skip the intro video. And just to confirm, everyone can see my screen all right, correct? Fantastic. Fantastic. So we're here today to talk about IT. We're here to talk about cybersecurity and attempt to draw as many parallels, whether it's construction or manufacturing or healthcare or retail, you name it. You would be surprised at how many similarities all of you share today. And so the general strategy, we're going to dive into the need to know first and foremost. And this is really a recap of what Joe and I at the last AGC, I believe it was a controllers event held out in the Des Moines or the Ankeny area. Joe and I, just about 1.5 years ago, we had gone through a pretty robust presentation explaining essentially this is a summary, and we'll break them down just to kind of set like the lay of the land here. And from there, we'll build off of what I feel is what we call decision points. So if we agree that there's a problem and there's a problem worth doing something about, what might that something ultimately be? There are only a few options today, and the urgency, if there's any that we're attempting to create here, the urgency is purely, it's motivated by the fact that your window of opportunity, so you participating, you listening in on today's session, your window of opportunity to make your own decisions, to dictate your own technology and your policies, that window of opportunity is shortening, or that box is squeezing down upon you, if you will. So whether you know it or not. So starting out, nobody's 100% secure. This is a bold statement, but it's a true statement. All we're aiming to do here is raise the alarm, and just because you think you're covered that's likely not the case. So we really put a large emphasis on, do you know exactly where you're at today, or do you think you know? And we'll set that aside. We'll break it down a little bit further, but understand that nobody is 100% secure today. We say there's a sliding scale with technology. You could spend $1 million a month or $1 million a year, and you could still get hit with something. So nobody's on, my goodness. Number two, the threats are very real and they're expensive. So again, in the spirit of a recap here, we have to agree that the problem exists. We have to agree that these cyber criminals are out there. There's ample data. So you're one Google search away from finding the latest horror story. And with that, there's plenty of stories to learn from as well. So if you need data as proof, if you need stories as proof, you likely don't need to go much further than, say, your local networking group, biz networking, young professionals, Rotary, you name it. So ask around if you don't believe us, okay? Even the proactive fall prey, what we mean by this is, even if you have a plan, it's that Mike Tyson quote, right? Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. So we've seen time and time again, countless organizations think they have a grasp on things, but they kind of set it, forget it. They might have forgot about it. And even through their incident response planning, this is a very painful process when they're exposed to, say, a cybersecurity event or perhaps a breach. Now, cyber insurance, highly recommended. It's why we've got Mr. Joe Vence here with us today. We're going to break that down. We've got an entire section dedicated to that. That is really the so what of today and what good looks like. It's what we're trying to get to. And more on that in a moment. Changes and regulations are here. That used to be changes and regulations are coming. Today they're here. And you should ask yourself as you're sitting back as we go through this over the next 30 minutes or so and say, do I really want the federal government dictating what good looks like? Do I really want my state government dictating what good looks like? Do I really want the insurance companies dictating what good looks like, or industry regulators and so on and so forth? New changes in this particular arena as far as, hey, Joe, this is what good looks like and you have to do it or else. That's kind of point number 5 here. Point number 6 is that there's no carrot today. There's really no carrot. There's just the stick. And I've got a couple of articles I want to share with you from a state legislation perspective to help understand that. IT has indeed become bigger than one person. What we mean by that, we're going to do a little build a tech exercise, kind of like Build-A-Bear, but and it's not to hurt anybody's feelings, but it's to understand, if you say the problem exists and we're going to do something about it, of that something, we could either hire an individual, kind of manage this ourselves and build our own team, or we could outsource to an organization that specializes in this. The notion that you could go out and hire an individual, and I can't tell you how many times when we're engaging these conversations with prospective organizations, if I put a solution on the table and I say, Joe, it's going to cost you 50 grand a year, but it includes the tools, it includes a full help desk team, and it includes that C-level, that chief information officer. And the response that we get, or the kickback that we get, is, geez, Jake, for 50 grand, I could go hire a person. There's some allure to that, to the old school mentality still of, I can just go get a body for that price. So we're going to do a build a tech exercise, and we're going to kind of shoot some holes in that strategy, if you will. And then lastly, no one's coming to help on this. I mean, that's why we're here and why we're doing this. And so Steve and John, I appreciate you on behalf of Bergen KDV and our construction channel, and Joe Vence for joining us today. Without us out here leading, but by example, so to speak, this thought leadership, without us setting the stage, without us educating, there's really not a lot of people out there doing that today, at least with good spirits. So without going any further here, there's a couple of things I want to show you. First and foremost, we're going to dive into an article here, and this is posted out on the AGC website. So more on that in a second. I want to talk to you on the parallels between industries, whether it's construction or financial planning or retail or manufacturing. And I just want to point some things out that are happening in real time here. So again, significant increases in hackers in the financial space. Why is that? They're out there protecting them on the investment side. This is a fun quote here. If a hacker gets the retirement assets, then there's nothing left to manage. So we're going to draw some parallels to construction there. One of the most important things that I highlighted is that there are indeed standards out there today that you can align yourself with. The general thought is to do the absolute bare minimum. But when something goes wrong, not if, but when something goes wrong, there are penalties and fines and institutional risks today. That's really what I want to emphasize here on that final 8th point of no one's coming to help. Okay, everyone's just coming and everyone's got their hand out. They're looking to get paid off. Okay. Now, in terms of cybersecurity frameworks, in terms of aligning yourself, say, with the NIST framework, we're going to talk about what the National Information Security Technology framework looks like. With the affirmative defense, this is new state legislation here from the Senate. And what they're essentially proposing is one of the first carrots that I've seen, anyways. And all it says is if you demonstrate intent to align yourselves with a nationally recognized security framework, if you're even trying to go that route, there may be, this is not passed yet, but there may be some protections from a tort claim. So liability, you getting sued beyond your insurance, there might be some state protection in the state program. And again, that's one of the few carrots that I've seen. And then kind of to contradict that a little bit, the idea, and this is just a somewhat recent article here within the past 2 days, the idea of having the federal government or relying on the federal government to define what good looks like and to protect you. Well, there's a whole litany of these articles out there. It's just ironic that this one came through yesterday. You would ask yourself, do I trust the federal government to handle my cybersecurity if these are the types of headlines and essentially content that we're seeing out there, their ability to protect themselves. So, Joe, there's absolutely a spot in here for you, but what I wanted to touch on real quick is just this why construction article. So as far as homework goes, as far as like assignment selling, I would say just after the fact, if you're looking for, and this was kind of blockbuster here, Jennifer and Daniel, they have a fantastic article that they've posted out on the AGC website. It's actually back in 2019. But what I really, really value about this article is understanding the what and the why, and then what to do about it. Okay. So as far as tying it to construction, what Jennifer and Daniel basically explained is what we already need to agree to, that cyber criminals exist and that the construction industry for many years, as they're alluding to here, for many, many years, the construction industry has appeared almost immune from this. Why? Well, because maybe in your mind, it's blue collar, and maybe in the bad guys' minds, it's also blue collar. But you guys are using very sophisticated tools today, and I would imagine you participating, understand the progression you've made, digital transformation, all of the new technology, whether it's drones or artificial intelligence. You think about the data that's going in and out from a bidding perspective. You have a target on your back is essentially what Jennifer and Daniel are explaining. And the reason you have that target on your back is you have data, just like any other organization. You have data, which is the new oil. That's what the bad guys are after. And the hunch that the bad guys are making is that you, as a construction industry macro, so as a whole, big picture, you are not spending enough or paying attention to this space enough, and therefore there's kind of blood in the water, so to speak. And once you get into one, it starts to fuel the sharks. All of that information gets pumped out into the dark web, and everyone just kind of piles on. So I'm glazing over this document right now. I did want to snip some, and I want to make sure I give all the credit to Jennifer and Daniel, because this is expertly written, and we'll definitely tie back to this in a moment. So,
Jake, hey, real quick, I think this really does help demonstrate some of the changes that have taken place within the construction industry. It wasn't too long ago that everybody was doing paper time cards. Now we've got some sort of an app on our phone that's allowing us to connect and at least get time entered. We're tracking equipment with some level of GPS or some methodology to be able to know where our equipment is, how long it's been operating. Some people using it as theft deterrence as well. So if it does get stolen, how are they being able to get their equipment back and recover? So yes, as you pointed out, very rapidly changing, and I don't see it slowing down for the construction industry.
And I appreciate the insert there, Steve, because ultimately, so we're acknowledging that a problem exists. We're acknowledging that, hey, they recognize there's blood in the water in the construction channel. There's all of this change that happened technologically. And when you go out and bring on new technology, pretty much 10 times out of 10 today, if it's somewhat aimless or spur of the moment, you've likely heard the, no pun intended, but kind of a cobbled together infrastructure. So we run into that day in, day out when we're going out and prospecting. And what we understand is that organizations have essentially pieced their technology together, and wherever that glue exists from one piece to the next, there's usually gaps. Okay. And those are the gaps that are being exploited. Bar none, Still today, the biggest threat is just, it comes from email phishing, so just they get some data, they social engineer, and they're just tricking you into clicking on something that you shouldn't and kind of handing the keys of the kingdom over. Now, the other thing, and why I snagged this particular piece, is just identifying that the legal threat landscape, and this is what is often very underappreciated or undervalued, is it's not, there's an element of this of doing the right things on the front end, but there's also an element of doing the right things on the back end. And it kind of comes back to the carrot or the stick. You're not really incentivized to do the right things on the front end. You're also not incentivized to do the right things on the back end. This is just a business decision. When you sit back and ask yourself, what is acceptable risk? Am I comfortable with our security posture today? And if something bad happened, do we have a plan? And that's really what Jennifer and Daniel are touting here as well, is it's not just doing the right things on the front end, it's making sure that you're doing the right things on the back end. So thank you for the ad, Steve. This is what we're banging the drum on today. Okay, don't overcomplicate it. That might have been a long intro there, drawing some parallels industry to industry, and really doing my best to explain that this can happen to you. That's the short and sweet of it. But here's the good news. This is a 5-step, if you will. It's more of a flywheel, not linear. But here's how we're helping organizations today. This image that you see on the left is the NIST framework here, and it starts with identify. And as I correlate that over, kind of using our translation, what we're really helping organizations do today, if you're sitting there and you say, I don't necessarily understand a lot of this stuff. I don't care to understand a lot of this stuff. I just want to know, with the limited amount of resources we have to allocate towards IT today, bang for buck, where should I spend that money? What we're preaching is you need to establish a baseline. Okay, if you go over to this article and you scroll down and you hear what Daniel and Jennifer also suggested, actionable steps within the construction industry. Okay, and they know you guys very well. First and foremost, build a team of trusted advisors. And if you read through this paragraph, it basically says you need to make it a priority. And I think we've done that. Okay, if you're here and you're listening to this, you understand that these threats exist, they're real, and we're deciding to do something about it. The next piece that they're insisting on is that you pick the plan. Why did we just go through Iowa state legislation? Why did we talk about the financial space? Why did we talk about the federal government handling cybersecurity? It's very important that you pick the plan. It's very important that you are in control of this. If not, and we wait until that box closes in, we wait until the mandates, we are now subject to all of these third parties' definitions of what good looks like, and they don't know your business. Okay, so we're establishing a baseline. We're figuring out where you're at today. And once we figure that out truly, and this is, of course, it pertains to IT and cybersecurity, but I suppose it's just like goal setting. You've got to put pen to paper and figure out, where are we at? Where are we going? And then how are we going to get there? So step 3 is just really all about, for simplicity's sake, here's the roadmap. Here's the 20 different things that we'd recommend that you do over the course of the next 2 or 3 years. And here's how we're going to execute and document that progression. Huge emphasis on documenting that progression. Now, from there, we know where we're at, we know where we're going, and we know how we're going to get there. Number 4, very, very important, and this is another takeaway I hope all of you write down, is that you need to have a plan. Okay, so an incident response plan. An incident response plan, in a nutshell, is essentially, we've got a chain of command established internally, so we know how we know who's going to make decisions and how we're going to make decisions when everything's on fire, first and foremost. We know who to call. That might be your insurance provider. They might dictate or require that they're the first call, or perhaps it's your technology team. Then you've got your insurance. Then you've got legal. Then you've got PR, and the list goes on. So we're going to break down that incident response plan in a bit, but understand that's very, very important. Number 4 is, when something bad happens, do you know what to do? And last but not least would be cyber insurance. Now, on that note, I definitely want some airtime here with Joe Venn. So Joe, if you can unmute your mic, I've got this prepared here, and just some bullets that I'd love to just get your take kind of off cuff. I called you yesterday. You were on the road. You were just leaving a renewal, and you talked about all of the education that you're doing today with the astounding increases. So that's perhaps where we could start with this, and then we can maybe we could go down this list, Joe, if you will.
You bet. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this group on this topic. And everything that you've said to this point is valid. I think one of the reasons that cyber insurance has maybe fallen behind is probably not the right terminology, but if you think about any company and its infancy stage, a lot of times companies ultimately purchase insurance coverage because there's some type of contractual obligation. So if you think about construction company, they might purchase their general liability upon receiving a contract that requires it when they're an early stage company. To this point, there has not been a lot of activity around contractual obligation for cyber insurance coverage. If you read through subcontractor agreements or, bid specs, it's just not common at this point to see you need to carry this amount of cyber insurance coverage. It needs to have first and third party coverage. This person needs to be named as additional insured. That has not existed to this point, but we are certainly moving into a time for all industry, but in particular construction, because that's so heavily contract focused. I think this is going to be the day and age where you really start to see that, and companies that have not purchased cyber to this point, it's just going to be a regular course of what's required to be in business. And so to that point, when you talk about, astounding increases in renewals, every client that we see is having some type of pain when it comes to their cyber renewals. And that could be as simple as, hey, our premiums year over year are significantly higher. Help us understand the reasoning for that. And insurance just as a function, it's a cost sharing effort, right? An insurance company does the analytics to predict based on how much they've underwritten and how much exposure they have. This is what they logically or reasonably predict for claims. And as a result of that, you as an individual or as a company pay a premium for that. And with claims activity being the way that it's been for the past several years, Jake, you're right. You're one Google search away from figuring out there's hundreds of thousands of articles that exist today that talk about cyber events that have happened. And so the insurance marketplace is trying to catch up to what reasonable claims activity is projected moving forward. And as a result, I know last year it was not out of the question, same exposure, same limits for companies to see 50 to 100% renewal rate increases. And the projection for this year in 2023 is much of the same. The recent market information that we're putting out is somewhere between 25 and 100% is what you should expect to pay for renewal rate increase if you have the same exposure and same limits of coverage. So it's certainly a pain point, but I think that speaks to just the necessity of the protection. Is the reason that it's becoming expensive to purchase the coverage is because it is a potentially catastrophic event for companies, and there's a lot of claims activity around it because this is a market for bad guys that really exists. So
Yeah.
really long answer to your quick question there, but just as an intro, that's kind of what we're seeing in the space.
Well,
Yeah.
and Joe, maybe just to add on in terms of that, being able to afford the insurance is one thing. If you could even get it, if you don't have the right procedures in place. Had a couple clients last year that if they didn't, follow through with something else, they were really going to secondary markets, and maybe they could still get cyber, but they were not with a company like Travelers if you didn't have the multi-factor authentication and some other things that were really, it eliminated you out of some of the markets.
There's no doubt about that. It's underwriters are being much more stringent or have a higher level of scrutiny around individual account underwriting. So you're right, MFA has been a big deal, multi-factor authentication. We're starting to see the market move into requiring some type of endpoint detection. Basically everything that Jake is sharing on this screen right now, this used to put you as far as best in class 2 to 3 years ago. If you had all of this, you were exceeding the market, and as a result, you might get some type of credit structure or premium reduction on your policies. The day and age that we're living in, it's almost required to either have a robust IT team or department that's internal, and that's very costly and expensive. So what's more common for our clients in the space is to have that trusted advisor, the managed service provider, kind of advisor that they work with around cybersecurity that helps them handle the renewal application, that has this in place for the company to best protect against the potential claim that's down the road. Because as the insurance guy, I think people roll their eyes at me, but the reality is you pay a premium to transfer catastrophic risk and potentially bankrupting events for your company. You pay a premium and then you really hope to never have to utilize the policy. That's just the function or form of insurance. So it's not one or the other. You don't partner with a group and then not purchase insurance, or you don't purchase insurance and then not partner with a group to protect your systems. In today's day and age, it really has to be both, in my opinion.
And I love all the directions that we can take this. And I think, for those in attendance, it's probably the most difficult part of, even navigating this conversation is, where are you at right now? What questions might you have? What's your knee-jerk reaction to hearing some of this? Perhaps what I could have done to set the stage a little bit better is go down memory lane real quick. And what memory lane shows us is, yeah, Joe, to your point, insurance companies, these markets, Travelers, Chubb, Tokyo Marine, you all have seen them and have farmed them before or shopped them. They lost a lot of money when they got into cyber insurance. They didn't know what they were doing. And as a result, they're playing a massive game of catch up. But in the meantime, they're catching up to, they're catching up to 2022 actuarial data. But in 2023, we know the bad guys are working around the clock 24/7. They're winning. They're making a lot of money. They're reinvesting all of this into their bad guy business. So there's absolutely no end in sight from a cyber insurance renewal perspective and increases. At least from my perspective, conceptually, I don't see where this ever comes to, yep, this is the ceiling on a price point. Now, with that, another important thing that Joe had mentioned here, and Steve as well, is yesteryear, if you were a construction organization that did apply multi-factor authentication, the idea of having a sequence of events to get your password entered into the system, security awareness training, making your team smarter, testing that they are getting smarter with fake phishing emails. This is essentially AV on steroids, antivirus. You've heard the semantics and the growing up, right, with the dial-up, but you used to be best in class having this stuff. Today, these are indeed the basics. This is permission to play. So if you're an organization that are not doing these basics right here, you're not even eligible for this cyber insurance. And now on that point, we run into, and we've got some team members on the call today, and they'll agree to this. We run into organizations time and time again that say, I've already got cyber insurance, don't worry about it. But upon doing a technical discovery, we recognize, geez, you're not doing anything on this list, or far and few between. What they typically have is and why I put it in quotes is the $50,000 general liability policy. And Joe, if you can talk perhaps a little bit more to that. I'm switching the screen up. I want to acknowledge a couple of bullets we have here that you need to know your fine print first and foremost. But most importantly, not all insurance is created equal, and that there are indeed flavors of cyber insurance, depending on the type of organization you're running, depending on the type of data you're processing, transmitting, and storing, depending on your size and so much more. There are flavors to this. And Joe, if you can just talk to the $50,000 one, I can't tell you how many organizations have a false sense of security, thinking, boy, if it does hit the fan, I can call Joe and bank on this $50,000 moving the needle. And I just don't see that being the case today.
Yeah, it sounds very cliche and I recognize it, but not all insurance is created equal, right? And so just because you are told, hey, you have some form of cyber coverage in today's day and age, again, that needs to be investigated a little bit more, or you need to work with a advisor that's walking you through and helping you understand what cyber coverage actually means. And so when a lot of insurers were looking to enter the market for cyber, they recognized a big opportunity in the fact that, hey, our insurance clients that we already have in the construction space, for example, they now are aware that cyber is becoming more top of mind. And so we can generate additional premium by putting on endorsements to include some level of cyber coverage. and market that to our clients. And so that was big, you know, a decade ago, maybe a little bit of a sooner time frame. But the $50,000 GL extension example, oftentimes the way that those insuring agreements read is that you have $50,000 worth of cyber coverage for an event that would happen, and it will protect you against third-party claims, which essentially means that in the event that your systems are breached and you are the responsible or negligent party for the loss or dissemination of information in which one of your clients or a vendor or an employee or somebody has a financial loss, and it can be tied back to your negligence or your systems, that 50,000 will protect you against a third party suit. The reality is, first of all, 50,000 just is not enough, period, unless it is the most minor breach in the history of breaches. That limit is just not enough for any type of insuring agreement. But beyond the scope of that is a lot of claims today are actually first party claims, which means that if I'm the insured, I'm the client, and I'm purchasing coverage, if my systems are breached and I have some type of ransom ask, or I have some type of financial loss as the result of data being destroyed or stolen from me, and my business is interrupted and I cannot generate the same level of income that I could before, or I have to pay an additional expense to restore my data, those $50,000 limit endorsements often protect against suits. And historically, that might have been where more claims activity happened. In today's day and age, a majority of claims are first party claims. And so what happens in that instance is you file the claim, the insurer sends a letter back that says, hey, this is for third party claims, and the allegation here is that this was a loss by you financially, and it's your indemnification that you're seeking, and there's not coverage that exists. So again, kind of a longer answer to explain that it's very important to have somebody that walks through what are the insuring agreements as stated here. These are some definitions of different things that could happen and where coverage would respond to. Oftentimes, everything that's laid out here, from what I can see, would likely not be covered with that endorsement to a general liability policy or some type of add-on.
Yeah, Joe, and so kind of in summary there, if you're not working, so we agree there's a problem. This is a little recap. We agree that there's a problem, and the problem is the bad guys, and the bad guys are after the data. Okay, and of which everyone participating here is sitting on data. You've got data sitting on your workstation right now. And so we are all potential targets for the bad guys. So there's a problem, it's real. We're going to do something about it. Now, still today, we've got two options. Joe, you mentioned you could build it yourself, which I'm glad that you mentioned that, because we're going to pivot over there in a moment. Or you could outsource to an organization. You say, you know what, I'm going to stay in my lane and I'm going to hire an organization, you know, like a GC, so to speak. I'm going to hire an organization that really specializes in this particular field. And in this case, it's IT and cybersecurity. Now, with that, what I heard you say is if you do not have the basics today, you are not even eligible to be having this conversation. I'm not even sure if the 50K is applicable at that point. The notion of not doing the right things on the front end and self-insuring is, for all intents and purposes, the kiss of death today. There is no such thing as a cheap cyber event, and God forbid it is indeed a breach, and you have first party and third party liability. Again, you're sitting on a workstation right now. Don't take my word for it. Head out to Google and bombard yourself, inundate yourself with what we call the scaretistics, because there's an infinite amount of scaretistics out there today talking about how painful and how expensive this is. So what we're doing here is we're creating some urgency to do something. We agree perhaps we should do the basics. We're still not sure if we should build it ourselves or if we should outsource it. But as a result of doing the basics now, we've got this IT team we've made a priority. It's important that the IT team, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but as you go through a cyber risk application today, some of that you might need a high level technician to even translate, as far as some of the questions being so subjective. So Joe, can you just talk about last point here on the cyber insurance, programmatic differentiation. And what I mean by that is it market versus market? No, I think Travelers and Chubb, Tokyo Marine, I think there's a limited amount of options out there today that we're seeing as far as markets still willing to play ball in the cybersecurity space. And if there's a limited number of markets and it's a race to the bottom, well, we already acknowledged they're not racing to the bottom. They're kind of racing to the top at this point. They're looking to get paid and make sure they're covering their tails. With all of that said, there's an infinite amount of fine print that you must understand. So the question becomes, Joe, in the most successful case, when you're explaining what a policy does and going back and forth with an organization, is that best had with a C-level resource, or are you finding that it's very impactful and prudent really to be working with a technical team so they understand exactly what they're doing, you understand exactly what you're doing, and vice versa?
Correct. Yeah. Transparently, I'm almost embarrassed to admit this, but there's sometimes that we receive the cyber application that needs to be filled out at renewal. It might be 9 pages. I read through some of the information and I'm not 100% confident that I understand what system is being asked about. Hey, do you have this system in place to protect against this? Yes or no? What oftentimes happens with our sophisticated clients, and this is becoming, I'd say, not even sophisticated, just more normal day-to-day process. We receive application, we provide it to the client, who provides it to their, again, their managed services provider, their outsourced IT firm. That group is completing the application on their behalf. Client signs off on it, provides it back to us and the underwriting company. Then when the renewal offer comes back, oftentimes it's us providing that information to the client and or that group for discussion. But ultimately, cybersecurity firms, whether it's Bergen, KDV, or others, you guys understand the language and what's being asked. I know better than us, and I think oftentimes better than the client themselves. So based on the way that applications are written, it's almost becoming a necessity anymore to make sure that those applications are double checked, because there is the concept of material misrepresentation, which essentially means if there's a claim and coverage would respond, but through the analysis of the claim, they realized, hey, the way that the application was filled out, what was represented to the underwriting company is different than the way that this claim played out. Those systems were not in place. The insurer would technically reserve the right to deny based on the fact that the material was misrepresented to them upon underwriting. And whether that's a claims denial or some type of alteration of coverage, that's where it's so important to make sure that a team is reviewing those applications and it's not a guessing game when you're filling those out.
And I remember actually late 2022, Travelers was the name, and nothing against Travelers whatsoever, but it was the first of its kind, I believe, where Travelers took the insured to court, essentially debating that exact topic, Joe, that you just highlighted there, that listen, we send these cyber applications out. It was either knowingly or unknowingly, doesn't matter to us. You said you had something, turns out you didn't have something. The bad guys got in. We investigated with our forensic team, and through that chain of liability, we've come to understand that you weren't doing the things you were supposed to be doing, and therefore, here's the bag. We're going to leave you holding it, and that's essentially how that played out. And again, first of its kind to go that direction from a legal suit perspective. So, Steve, Joanna, have we had any questions come in particular to this topic here prior to us moving on?
I haven't seen anything come through yet, but I will add that, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, Jake. It's really about assembling your best team. Whether you're a contractor and you're getting that subcontractor to help you perform a certain task, or multiple subcontractors, it's really about the team effort. And I really like the structure of, the GC may not have the expertise, so you outsource that. And in the case of electrical or plumbing, they may outsource that. Well, it may be the outsourcing of the technology support perspective. And I think that's becoming more and more common.
Yeah. And on that note, Steve, I would say that hypothetically, so Steve, you're running the construction organization, I'm leading the Bergen technology solution, and Joe's our underwriter, our insurance provider. we've all got skin in the game here, and that's essentially what we're acknowledging. You don't exist, Steve, as a construction organization without the protection of myself, but we've already said that the protection I'm providing is never 100%. Therefore, what we really focus on is Joe Venz and his team. And we say, hey, let's make sure we have backup. Let's make sure we have insurance. Let's make sure we've got a written incident response plan. So there's this maybe symbiotic relationship that's being established here where we're all heading into deep water together. But, as we head over to this build a tech exercise here, I think it'll become a little bit clear. It seems to me, in the 8 years of myself doing this and counting, it seems to me that this bang for buck, there are very few options or directions today, quite frankly. So again, back to that box that's closing in. So please bear with me as we go through this build a tech exercise. And I say it a little tongue in cheek. And again, it's not designed to hurt anybody's feelings. If you've hired a technical resource, or you've got a tenured resource, there's a lot of native knowledge or tribal knowledge, if you will, that individual understands about your organization. So this is not downplaying it, but if you are coming to us today to say, I'm not sure where we're at, I don't know where we're going, and I definitely don't know what steps to take to get to this undefined goal. As a result, we don't qualify for insurance. I'm not really sure if our backup's sitting in a good spot. One of my best buddies at a networking luncheon just said he brushed up against cybersecurity and spent $250,000 and he's pulling his hair out. I've never seen him cry before. I mean, these are real stories. So as far as a solution goes going forward, we agree doing nothing doesn't make any sense. That's not a smart business strategy at this point. Nor is, when we talk about these claims, we talk about these legal suits, negligence and ignorance are one and the same today. If you're burying your head in the sand, again, all you're doing is rolling the dice. So again, now what? Well, should we build or hire a team? And here's the build a tech exercise. So when you consider the attributes of a technical hire, we want that individual to be smart, of course, certified, right? They've got a wide ranging skill set. They're hardworking. They've got this aptitude. They want to keep learning, and you have to, because technology is very fast paced. So they've got to be committed to continuing to level themselves up while retaining all of the legacy information that they know, right? And we're not necessarily wired to remember all this stuff. So they're a team player. They're also customer facing. They're trustworthy. They're loyal, multifaceted. They can be a level one entry level, day-to-day help desk technician. They can be a high level project engineer. They could be a chief information officer. They could have cybersecurity skills. So again, it's a jack of all trades is what we're defining, and they're available 24/7. Now, we have to also focus on real life, and we ask, what do they cost? This perfect technical hire? Are they in your market? Okay, are they going to be working remote, and what are the implications there? Would they want to work for you? Based on the IT culture or a lack thereof, do they fit into that IT culture? Could you show them a career path? Technicians are very big on a career path. This is where I'm at today, but I've got ambitions and I've got drive. Can you continue to pay me more and level me up? Do you backfill? Who holds that individual accountable? So what we basically boil this down to is, does this person actually exist? And the answer is no. Rarely. No, this person doesn't exist. And then also, it's fair to point out, this doesn't include, when we're considering cost, again, bang for buck, resources is the number one thing that either limits or prohibits an organization from moving forward with any of this stuff. So with the finite amount of resources, could we go out to this Robert Half technology report? So this is a salary guide for 2023, so it's updated. When you go up into the role category, there's 14 different drop downs, and within each of them, there's a list, okay? I selected help desk. This is entry level help desk here, help desk tier 1. We're looking for bottom of the barrel, top of the barrel. Here's our 45-50K. And remember, that doesn't include the bennies, the 20% for the benefits. That doesn't include the tools that we talked about. Remember the basics for cyber insurance, security awareness training, EDR, so on and so forth. This doesn't include the tools. This is just the body. Doesn't include the benefits, and it doesn't include the equipment, the servers, the switches, the access points, the firewalls, the backup appliance, the workstations. So to make a decision today, and here we go. If it doesn't include the tools, but you at least got the help desk technician, how about that security component? Well, here's prices for a security resource. Well, how about an account manager, maybe like a chief information officer, someone that's going to help us figure out where we're at, build that roadmap, help us with budgeting, pull us along with new ideas, and be the guy going forward, guy or gal going forward. This is what they cost, right? So the picture that I'm attempting to paint here is that it is somewhat ludicrous to go out if you're starting from scratch and build this from yourself. It's going to be terribly costly. And so the so what to all of this, and again, the path that we're leading down, and this is not pointing towards Bergen KDV, but it's pointing towards an organization like Bergen KDV, where if you choose to outsource, relatively speaking, for that same price of going and hiring that $50,000 or that $60,000 employee, negating the tools, the equipment, and all of that, to go out and hire that one individual for that price point, or for that price point, you could bring an organization in like Bergen KDV that includes all of the tools, all of the basics that Joe Venz and his team is looking to check the box on. That can include an annual security assessment. Perhaps that's where we start. Let's figure out where you're at. Let's build a plan. Let's employ our team of 30 help desk technicians and an entire dedicated team to project management and start to execute on that IT roadmap of yours. Let's, as a CIO, so your new fractional chief information officer that you would get in that outsourced package, all for the price of that one individual, right? The build a tech. That CIO is going to help you build that incident response plan. That CIO is going to help you review that cyber application that Joe Venz sent out. And again, you're sitting back and you say, well, why the hell do I need insurance? This is all just so expensive. You have to head out and you've got to find a way to scare yourself or motivate yourself. It's either the gold medal in front of you or the wolf behind you. You got to find what motivates you and what makes it click for your leadership team to say, we need to make this a priority. We're going to spend a little bit of money. Now I'll pause again and then we'll dive into these C-level questions, and then we're getting right to the end. So I'll go fast, but Steve, anything else that you want to add, or Joe?
I will add one thing as you went through that list. I think the main thing is do something. Don't just stick your head in the sand and say, yeah, sorry, can't afford it. You know, you've got to realize and make that investment to at least do something. It may not be that top end, fully secure, but at least start the pattern. As you said, you can kind of lay out a timeline for implementation of additional security measures or better technology components, but you can't ignore it.
Yeah, and that's all music to Joe's ears as well. You know, so part of that insurance topic is just how do you impress your underwriter? You know, if you don't have cyber insurance or you're very curious on this stuff, if it's the question chicken or the egg, I'm telling you, you're going to want to start by doing some of the right things. You want to demonstrate some intent. And so I'll talk on this topic real quick. Defensibility. What is defensibility? It means that when bad things happen, in IT anyways, the liability follows the data. So you really can't hide what the particular events. There's a breadcrumb trail to follow, and very, very quickly you might uncover the fact that, yep, we were at fault. We didn't do the things we should have done. And like I mentioned, negligence or ignorance today, and again, no disrespect, but the idea of, well, I didn't know I should have been doing something, that doesn't cut it anymore. That doesn't fly with anybody. So the number one question in a litigious situation, you know, where you're getting sued, or like Joe said, the first or the third party liabilities, the question being asked is, what would a reasonable company or person be doing today? And a reasonable company or person today would have they would know where they're at. So back to that, remember when I said don't overcomplicate it? You got to figure out where you're at. You got to figure out where you're at. And from there, we got to build a plan. And in that plan is going to be a list of steps, basic steps, bang for buck. How can we move the needle the most? How can we increase your security posture the most with a finite amount of resources? Let's follow that roadmap. And as we're making those improvements, let's make sure that we're documenting and measuring them. Because as we show year over year or month over month or quarter over quarter progression, all of this is basically our proposal to Joe Venz to say, Joe, listen, there's a sliding scale with technology. We're not spending zero, but we can't afford $1 million. We're somewhere in the middle, wink, wink. We know where we're at. We know where we're going. Here's the things that we're doing. Someone like Joe and his organization, from a program perspective, albeit the market might be the same, Joe and his team can go to bat for you then too, to say, hey, Chubb or Travelers or Tokyo Marine, these guys aren't perfect right now, but they've got a hell of a track record and they're trending in the right direction. So that's a very real conversation that's happening now. I'll end with this. If you know, we haven't made it obvious already, that I'm just really pushing. This needs to be a priority for C-levels. Matter of fact, a lot of CIOs or CFOs today are kind of wearing that CIO hat. that could be misplaced. Maybe you're really good at technology, but at the end of the day, these are the top 10 questions. So of our very comprehensive security assessment that Bergen KDP provides, which typically comes in between, I would say, like 6,500 and 12,500, not the price float, but just to give you a sense for, we're not talking about a lot of money here to figure out where the heck you're at. The number one question that you should be asking today is, do you have dedicated cyber insurance policy? And emphasis on dedicated, right? And we've already unpacked this a lot. If you've got something, do you know what flavor it is? Have you read the fine print, and you know how it works in action? Okay. Number two is just a real life scenario. If you came in tomorrow morning and this equipment that you're on and you're working with, and it's locked up, and you've got a message on your screen that says you've gotten hit, okay, like a ransomware situation, what would you do? Who would you call? How do you think that would make you feel? And if you can quantify that stress or that anxiety or that lump in your stomach, perhaps that's your motivator. Do you have a set of information security policies? So this is just back to, where are you at? Where are you going? And are you documenting stuff, right? Do you have an inventory of software in use? Again, what do you have today? Can Joe Venz download or sign up for anything? What I mean by that is, on my workstation right now, if I wanted to, I'm out on Twitter and I saw some cool new game, could I download that right to my workstation just from a click of a button? So what controls are in place? Do you have odd things plugged into your network? Maybe you haven't been in the office in a while, and your teammates or employees are running ham, and they've got all sorts of new gear in the office. We can't tell you, back to that cobbled together infrastructure. When we ask and we take an inventory, and it's like, well, why did you buy this? It's like, I don't know. I don't even remember buying it. I'm not even sure we bought it. It might not even be ours. How is it plugged into the network? So do you know where you stand today? Are you using MFA? Remember, that was the number one thing from Joe Venn's perspective in the insurance world. Multi-factor authentication, just permissions to play. It's fundamental. Controls around employee access. Do you know what data is being stored? So, and last but not least, are you aware of any compliance? So all of this really comes back to the not overcomplicating it. And I think that's where we can leave it. I'll pull that back up real quick. Establish a baseline, you guys. The easiest way to do that, do not go out and do a free self-evaluation. It reeks of bias, I guess. If I'm going to do a performance review on myself, hey, 10 out of 10, that was easy. But if I paid you to come in and actually very strictly and objectively measure my performance, perhaps you come in at a 6 out of 10, right? So the difference could be staggering, and the difference could be catastrophic in terms of IT and cybersecurity. So how do you establish a baseline? Find an independent third-party organization that has a demonstrated track record, if you will, of playing in this space of IT and cybersecurity, and just figure out what you have from a network perspective, figure out, generally speaking, what your security posture looks like, and ask that question amongst your team, what is an acceptable risk? And if it's only 10 grand or 20 grand or 50 grand, then we should start talking about cyber liability insurance as well. So, Steve, I'll pause. Joe, Steve, anything you guys might want to add to conclude here?
Just to jump in quickly, because I know that, I sit in on these webinars myself for other topics, and oftentimes there's so much information that we've thrown out there today. Jake or Steve, I guess I'd ask either of you, if you're walking away from this webinar, what would be your recommendation of somebody on here is going to take one single action? They're going to do one thing as a result of all of this information. What is that one thing that you would recommend they do immediately following viewing this, or tomorrow, or whenever they're going to take action? What should that be?
Yeah, I'll answer from my perspective is I would go find a good technology firm or firm like Bergen KDV and say, hey, I really haven't explored this. Where do I start? So rather than, trying to absorb all this and take it back and say, oh, let's see, I'm supposed to start here on slide deck number 3. I'm supposed to take this step. Is let's start that collaboration and that relationship of building the trust, building the expertise within your team. And I say that extended team, not just your own employees. So that's where I'd start. Go to the professionals.
I'm glad that was your answer, because we're on the same page there. To me, that is just the easiest. Hey, I get it. There's a lot going on out there. I probably need to do some work, but there's so much overwhelmed when it comes to all the things that could happen. To me, the easiest first step is I need to do my own independent research on who I should potentially be working with and make that call to set up the initial consult, just to say, I sat in on a webinar. I understand that this is something that could impact my business. Where do I start? And again, whether that's Bergen KDV or another firm that they've researched that seems reputable, to me, that's just a very logical next step to today's presentation.
Great. Anything to take us home, Jake?
No, that was well said, gentlemen. I appreciate it and all the effort that went into setting this up. Well, you know, I think we negated the technical challenges and we got through. So yeah, well, great summary, guys.
Great. I'll provide a little closing here. For those participants here, you know, we touched upon a lot of topics in a really short time span. Thank you, Jake and Joe, for your insight and expertise. We hope that as a participant, you take away some of this information that we shared. We know you work hard for your money, and we're here to try and help you hang on to as much of it as possible by working with you to minimize the taxes and the costs that you might incur. As technology continues to evolve, those exposures also evolve, and that can have a significant impact on your bottom line. We want you to explore the managed IT services with Bergen KDV, and we can provide an overall solution. And you may even want to be specific around your IT assessments and what you're looking for. We can help, and then Joe's team can help evaluate some of those products to help protect those losses as we go forward. So finally, thank you for joining our webinar. For more information about Bergen KDV and the industries we serve and solutions, please check out bergenkdv.com. There is a little information, I think, on the last page of the slide deck, Joanna. And we probably don't have that on there, but certainly reach out to us through Bergen. There we go. I see a piece. Reach out to us through bergenkdv.com. We will distribute the information here separately and the recording as well. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time and your investment in the seminar.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.